This is the second part of getting the most out of Sati and understanding what it really is. Today I explore the relationship between Saturn and Jupiter, and their aspects happen during the 7.5 years of Sati. This is so important in helping you think beyond all the simplistic good, bad nonsense. This relationship between Jupiter's grace and Saturn's focus and effort is key. So check this out. Okay, so I'm talking in more depth now about the Sati and how to really understand it in great depth, and especially to understand the life lessons that we're meant to learn, why for some it can be much more severe than others, around some basic principles. And in this video I'm actually going to be talking about the relationship of Jupiter to Saturn. You want to understand something, that the planets move in consistent patterns and orbits. And within any Sati period, there are going to be 3 or 4 Jupiter-Saturn aspects. Now, you can't predict exactly which ones will happen, but you should know that within those Sati cycles, there's going to be at least 2 or 3 exact aspects from Jupiter onto Saturn. Some of them might be one-way aspects from Jupiter right to Saturn, which means it's literally just Jupiter conferring grace onto Saturn. It usually happens once. Sometimes there will be a one-way aspect from Saturn onto Jupiter. There will often be either one opposition or one conjunction, because again, you can just understand this because Jupiter goes around the zodiac every 12 years. In the first video, I talked about the impact of having Saturn transit over the sign before the moon. And of course, if someone has planets in that sign before the moon, they will really start to feel the impact of that Sati right there, right then. And then over the moon itself, where the pressure of time and the impact and seriousness of Saturn really sort of crunches down on us and is in many ways trying to shatter our illusions and shatter our attachments. Because this is what Saturn does. Saturn goes and brings pressure to anything that he goes over in our natal chart. And the moon is literally the source of our attachments. It's the consciousness itself, the mind, the connection to the past and our memories, and the emotions that come up as a result as we try to integrate all of life's varied experiences and all of these unintegrated parts of our consciousness into a holistic identity and a holistic reality. It's the moon that is trying to do this. And literally, the moon means it's the heart. We're trying to connect to divine love, pure love, through the heart. That's why pure love is the royal road to liberation. And there's no other way. Wish there was. We all wish there was. Because that's the hardest thing to do, is to keep connected to the infinite love in our heart, which is who we truly are, and find infinite compassion and joy in the good things, the bad things, the fears, all the grievances, all the ego and the struggles. Underneath it all, the reason all that stuff is difficult is because we're not connected to the heart. Forget all the justifications. You know, when I post these videos and whatnot, people will post comments, well, you know, certain anger is justified because if you've been abused and blah, blah. It's not a judgment. Of course, there's no judgment in it. But when we have to do that, we're cut off and separated from our true nature when we need to protect ourselves, which we need to do once we've incarnated. That's why it's hard. It's not simple. We've incarnated because we have karma. Things happen to us that reinforces this individuality, and that's what we must navigate. And so the way we try to navigate this infinite world of spirit and consciousness and this finite limited world through the body and mind, the way we do that and integrate that and become whole is through the heart, through the moon. So this is why when Saturn goes over the moon, that whole structure gets shaken. We get shaken to our roots. It's why it brings us in touch with our family and our upbringing and our childhood. This is why you often see people die who we're close to, because we have attachment to that. Sometimes it doesn't, but often you'll see it. And again, we can just stay immature and childish and say, oh, that was so hard. When's it going to stop? I get it. It's not easy, but that's what it is. So in this video, I'm going to actually show a chart of the recent Sati that took place when the moon was in Libra. So for people who have moon in Libra, Sati just finished. So you can see with this chart that I have, it's actually from January 5th, 2011. You can see Jupiter has just gone into Pisces opposite Saturn, at least in the same signs, but we want to look at exact degrees. So I have this chart set to advance each month. You can see what happens by the time we're at April of 2011. Jupiter and Saturn are very close. Jupiter's just gone over in a direct opposition with Saturn, April 5th, 2011. So at that time, in early April, we would have seen an opening in 2011 where something would have started that would have been auspicious, that would have really set off the the Sati that was about to come. Because again, this is the sign before Libra, and we see there's a Jupiter aspect. So there would have been some auspicious meeting that would have happened, or some kind of thing that sets off a trend that is going to start to shake the emotional and psychological foundation of someone who has the moon in Libra. As someone who does, I can tell you that happened with me. And then we just keep going forward. Now we'll see that Jupiter then moves into Aries. We keep this going. Jupiter goes retrograde back. Now we have in December of 2011, you see this December 31st, 2011, and into the early part of the next year, we have another Jupiter-Saturn aspect. This time it's an opposition. Jupiter's opposite Saturn. This is this is the second opposition that's happened. And again, due to the retrograde cycle, you'll see Jupiter and Saturn often hit a direct opposition several times. Or actually, it's usually twice, I believe. Outer planets can do it even more than that. But we see this. So the opening that started in April 2011 perhaps closed or got deepened or refocused here at the end of 2011, December 31st. We have this Jupiter-Saturn opposition. By this time, Saturn was over the moon in Libra. It was already in the sign. And so a person who had the moon in Libra would start to really feel that pressure at that time. And Jupiter would have come around the end of 2011 and really shared some grace. And again, Saturn would have just poked his head in Libra at that time. So if we go forward, step forward by months, again, we're going forward again. Jupiter keeps going. Saturn goes retrograde, pokes his head back in Virgo. Jupiter has now moved into Taurus. And there was no aspect because the orb is too wide. And I am talking about exact aspects, not just in the same sign, but when the degrees hit the aspect. That's the way you look at this when the exact aspect occurs. So then as you see, Saturn goes back into Libra by the middle of 2012, summer of 2012, and then Jupiter continues. Jupiter goes retrograde now here at the end of 2012. Saturn goes retrograde. And now we have right here by the middle of 2013. Here at July 2013, July 23rd, 2013, Jupiter has now just passed the exact trinal aspect with Saturn. So you can see at this time there's a one-way aspect from Jupiter giving grace to Saturn. So those who had the Sati in with the moon in Libra, think back to the summer of 2013. There was a Jupiter aspect onto Saturn, which should have conferred some answer or some grace or some optimism and hope at that time. This was just a one-way aspect. It could have really shown some benevolence. And again, it's not just aspecting Saturn, but it's also aspecting the moon. Because again, remember, we're talking about the moon in Libra, so Jupiter would have been aspecting the moon, a one-way aspect, and bringing some grace and insight and awareness. And hopefully, if someone has like a spiritual practice or a guru, it shows the blessings of the guru flowing at that time. And then we move forward. Saturn keeps going. Jupiter goes retrograde, and we have another. We're going to get another aspect because Jupiter's retrograde. Let's go forward. When he goes forward, he's going to hit Saturn aspect again. As you see now, especially right there on May 19th, 2014. These are by 30-day increments, but May, June 2014, another trine from Jupiter onto Saturn. So again, you can see because of the retrograde motions, these aspects will happen a couple times. Jupiter at 24 Gemini, placing this aspect on Saturn at 25 Libra. Personally, I can remember this one. And I really appreciated that Jupiter aspect because my moon is at 25. So this is when I was really getting worked over. And so this aspect of Jupiter onto Saturn definitely confers blessing, right? And brings some relief. So we had the Jupiter aspect at about 5 degrees, and then we had it at 24. No, it was at 10, I think. Yeah, 10 or 12. Yeah. So you see, it was like 10 or 11, and then also 25. Now we go forward, and we're going to see the other aspect now. Right here, we're seeing Saturn's putting one-way aspect on Jupiter. So we can see around October of 2014, Saturn and Jupiter are very close to an exact aspect from Saturn onto Jupiter. You see this square, this is a one-way aspect now from Saturn onto Jupiter, and it shows pressure, restriction, and again, a Saturn aspect onto Jupiter shows where we're now being asked to commit to what inspires us. Whereas the one-way aspect of Jupiter onto Saturn shows grace and benevolence in the face of stress and pressure and difficulty. So you have to understand the difference between planets when they aspect each other, the one-way aspect. Saturn putting the aspect onto Jupiter says, focus and commit to what inspires you. Jupiter one-way aspect onto Saturn says, there's still hope and purpose and teaching and great wisdom in this difficulty that you're dealing with. So at this time of October 2014, the aspect doesn't perfect because what happens is Jupiter turns retrograde and then Saturn keeps going. So it's kind of it's a near miss. And in Tajik astrology, it actually wouldn't be an aspect, but they do get close to that square. As you see Jupiter, you see Saturn then moves on past it. Then Jupiter goes retrograde. Saturn goes retrograde. And Jupiter keeps going. You'll see the actual completion of the aspect when they hit the exact degrees. Oh, they didn't actually hit it. Oh yeah, here they were. Here they are. They hit it right here. This is the actual square that happens. Where is it? like right here, you see, because Saturn is now at 4 of Scorpio and Jupiter just passed 6. Yeah, so it went really fast within a month. Okay, so from July 13th, 2015, you look the next month, to August 2015, Saturn aspected Jupiter. So that's also when the aspect was exact. So August 2015, we really saw the pressure of Saturn onto the higher purpose of Jupiter, because that's when the aspect perfected. Before, it was a near miss, almost, and then the planets separated, but then they converged because of the retrograde cycles, and that's what you have here. Jupiter 6 of Leo and Saturn at 4 of Scorpio here by August of 2015. So you could see in August 2015 a aspect from Saturn onto Jupiter saying, okay, focus and commit to this thing that is in keeping with your higher purpose, with your higher wisdom. This thing is worth sacrificing for, focusing on, and not just giving up because it's hard. See, this is what Saturn gives us, which is great. This is the greatness of Saturn, is it gives us the fortitude and the maturity to do what we know is right, not necessarily what is easy. Boy, it's a huge lesson in life, because we want everything to be easy, and we want to have fun, and want it all to be nice. What do? We avoid things just because they're not nice and pleasant. But that's not the way we're supposed to live. That's living through our likes and dislikes, what's called karma. We're not supposed to live through likes and dislikes. We're supposed to live in accordance with Dharma, which is what we know is right, not what is easy or makes us happy in the moment all the time. And so Saturn putting that aspect on Jupiter says, you know what's right, you know what's inspiring, you know what the truth is, you know what's guiding you to your higher purpose. Now you need to focus on it and not avoid staying focused just because it's difficult, right? So now notice that this aspect from Saturn onto Jupiter comes, and this is August 2015. That Sati started in the middle of 2011. So this is 4 years into the Sati, depending on how your planets were. You're getting this message from Saturn onto Jupiter saying, what are these lessons that you've learned? Because Jupiter is the lessons we're trying to learn and how they are connecting us with a higher vision. Remember, when the Sati started, Jupiter was actually at the very end of Aquarius. So Jupiter has gone through end of Aquarius, then Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. It's now in Leo. Look at how far Jupiter has gone in that Sati cycle. How many lessons you've been trying to learn as Jupiter goes through these different signs during the Sati, and at every convergent point where Jupiter is aspecting Saturn, or there's a mutual aspect, or Saturn is aspecting Jupiter, it's a different opportunity to bring together teachings and duty and facing unpleasantness. Sometimes it's Jupiter saying, here's some grace to understand this difficulty. Sometimes it's Saturn saying, you know what's right, you know what's inspiring you, you know what the purpose is. Now focus on it and don't give up just because it's hard. See all these lessons that I've been teaching you? See how tough and strong you are? You thought this was going to kill you. And look, you're dealing with it. Your parents have died and all these things that you could never imagine losing, and you're still breathing and you're still moving. It hasn't killed you. It's made you stronger. So again, what you do is then you look at those opportunities and those situations, like when Saturn aspects to Jupiter, it's saying, see, you can make it. And look at the great lessons that you've learned, right? So that was August 2015. And I think that's the last. Yeah, because then, whoops, let me go back. Yeah, that's the last. Oh, no, it's not. We got another one. Look. Now, May 2016, there's another one. They're both retrograde. Oh, I remember this because Mars was also there. So May 2016, Saturn and Jupiter both in that square aspect. Again, that same aspect, Saturn putting it on Jupiter. They're both retrograde. Again, Saturn saying, you can get through it and learn the higher purpose and your higher wisdom as a result of these difficulties. So you can see that May 2016, there were things that were probably difficult that, again, pressured your beliefs. 'Cause that's what Jupiter is, what we believe, what inspires us. And Saturn is to pressure it and maybe destroy a certain part of it that's weak. These things are very important to understand. And of course, those aspects that were in Scorpio to Jupiter, they start to then affect, or actually the aspects that were in Libra and Scorpio, these are the ones that affect the moon in Scorpio. So people who have the moon in Scorpio now, their Sati started when those aspects, when that opposition started once Saturn went into Libra and Jupiter aspected it. So again, what's also going to happen is in a couple years, Jupiter is going to join Saturn in Sagittarius. Right here. So 2020, Saturn Jupiter join in Sagittarius. But the other thing to understand about, for instance, like the current Sati, and the other thing that you see is Jupiter usually is not too far behind, or is often not too far behind where Saturn has just gone a few years. Or if it winds up being on this part, Saturn is kind of mirroring Jupiter or going through it right before Saturn goes through. So right now, for example, those who have had the moon in Libra or Scorpio, Jupiter is coming behind those signs. A few years after Saturn went through and gave that pressure of Sati, after Saturn goes through, then Jupiter comes through and brings the lesson, brings the hope, brings the grace, right? Guru's grace. And again, so for the people who literally had the moon in Libra and their Sati finished, Jupiter is now in Libra. So it's like, oh, okay, that's 7 years. Now Jupiter is in Libra, bringing a greater connection to Guru and Guru's grace. Again, for those people who had the moon in Scorpio and their Sati, they're on the last, 2.5 to 3 years. Jupiter is about to go over their moon next year. Then Jupiter's going to join Saturn in the last part of their Sati. And you can just keep this going. Those people who have their moon in these other signs of Sagittarius, Aquarius, Capricorn, whatnot, Jupiter is actually going to pass through those signs first, like a year or 2 years earlier, so you can get your relationship with your guru and your teachers intact first. Again, if we understand astrology, then we know what's coming. And so again, this is the other thing to understand. It's time to grow up and stop being so childish about Sati and all the big boogeymen of Vedic astrology. It's just outdated. And, it doesn't amount to anything. Particularly Saturn, which shows our ability to really grow up and be responsible spiritually and mature and face life's, quote, difficulties are not even really that difficult. And so we can see the Guru's grace of Jupiter intimately entwined with the awareness of endings and facing our own salvation and the pressures of Saturn that we tend to want to avoid. So I hope this was helpful.